Hello, I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman from the Greensboro, North Carolina Fire Department History Book Committee. We're here today at the Greensboro Historical Museum. I'm standing in front of the General Green, the first steam pumper, or as they called it back then, a steamer. Today, December 9th, 2019, we are starting a new tradition of recording and preserving the heritage and culture of our retirees. Our retirees have contributed so much to the success of our great fire department. Their stories retire with them and are sometimes gone forever when they pass away. They will share their emergency calls that will always be a part of their memories forever. So sit back and listen as they carry us through their journey in the Greensboro Fire Department.
My name is Bernard Olympia Evans. Most people call me F.O. because they didn't know what my name was. You know, I've had 35 years with the Greensboro Fire Department. I retired. I've been out now for 9 years, going on my 9th year. And my age right now is 69. Before I came on the fire department, I was working with a moving company, and that moving company was called Neptune. So they folded, and I put a couple of years in with them. Then I went to Sears and worked at Sears. And I did that for about 2 years, and Sears had a layoff, and that's when the Greensboro Fire Department called me, which hit me right on time. But my objective was that I needed a job at that time because I had recently got out of the Marine Corps, and I was looking for work. At that time, work was kind of hard to make. You know, you go places that sometimes they got jobs open, sometimes they didn't. So I just took whatever I could at that time. The process for me was they gave me an aptitude test. So I had to go down there, fill out all that. Then after that, I got a call, and Chief Powell at that time wanted to interview me, so I went down to Central Station and took the interview with him. And then I waited, and I got hired. Oh, I was challenged a great deal in training. My hardest part was fire streams. When we got to that, they told us that when we get to fire streams, that chances are some will drop from whatever high school they were. As long as they maintain a 70, you were good. But fire streams was one thing that really gave me a hard time. In my training class, there was Richard Beeson, Marvin Fannin, guy named King, and Bill Brown. To the best of my knowledge, no, wasn't really. About the funniest thing was when I realized I didn't know whether I was going to make it because of the fire streams. I had Chief Hagler and Chief Hilliard, and they were going on a trip out of town. We had this old station wagon. So he made me get out there and wash and wax that station wagon, and he wanted it so immaculate, he said, he wanted to be able to look outside with the windows up. So I did it, and he told me nobody in my class was supposed to help me finish it. But at that time, the Greensboro Fire Department was using that Rain-X, and it was hard. Once you put it on there, you either had to buff it off or you had to get some guys to help you. And we had quite a few guys. They wanted to help, but I told them, I said, I'm warning you. The man said, no help, but y'all do what you want to do. So I appreciated that they did step in at the time. And it was more or less later on, after I made it, and I had my 6 months, and I went back and took that test, and they told me at that time I'd passed, so I feel good about that. But the first year, it was kind of interesting. I didn't know if I was really going to be able to hang with it, but I stayed in it, and I enjoyed it. My first assignment was at Fire Station 5. I was assigned to the ladder truck at that time, Truck 5. My captain at that time was Stephen Faust, and we had a good crew. And I enjoyed the crew that was there. So being at a two-company station, you kind of got with the pumper guys and the ladder guys. So my crew was excellent. At that time was Barnett. He wasn't the captain at that time. I had two tall, we call him Gary Watson, and what else was it? Danny Miller, and myself on the ladder. And then we had Wheeler, Pete Colbert, and I believe it was Warren Ritter on the engine, and that's about it. No, not really. Since the guys couldn't pronounce my name, a guy named Schamberg on the engine, he decided to start calling me F.O. At that time, they were coming out with FEO process, so he just started calling me like F.O. for my name, because that's the way it worked. At that time, each shift had its own locker, which we had cabinets and we had to have locks on them. So when some of the guys, I know once we came in and somehow the guys pulled the cabinets apart, they couldn't get the lock off, so they turned the peanut butter jar upside down and they ate all the peanut butter, screwed the cap back on and put it back up in the cabinet. I remember that because we came on, the shift we came on that next day, it wasn't pretty. So everybody played tricks on each other on other shifts and stuff about the lockers. My crew cooked together, and everybody had pretty much a different type of recipe, or they would either cook some of the same thing in a week's time. So that was either hot dogs or hamburgers, whatever anybody wanted to fix. When the firefighters eat together, you have a camaraderie with everybody, and you get to talk and laugh and joke about stuff, and it makes the day go by. I per se I was a pretty good cook, My favorite dish probably was baked chicken, macaroni and cheese, green beans, like that. And then I'll change it up sometimes and do fried chicken. But that was my best. One of my first calls, as I was looking back and thinking about it, turned out to be a working house fire. And at that time, I believe it was on Bryce Street. And it was at night. And that was I'd say it was the first time that I had to do CPR on a young child or kid. And we had two twin boys that got caught in the fire. And the moment that the door was open, when we were getting ready to make the attack, we had a backdraft. And we had to really duck down low. But once we got in and we got the two kids out, we started doing CPR, because my class was the first class that went through training for EMT, but when we got on lines, we had these old resuscitators that we had to use, but we were hoping that the kids would turn out okay, but it didn't work that way. With coping with death is, I haven't seen so much death in my time that I didn't really let it bother me. I didn't take it home with me and think about it much, because I've seen too much of it. Yes, we ran medical calls, but we didn't have squads at the time. We had an old panel Chevrolet truck, and the first time I got that call, I was with Stephen Fowler and Chief Ritter. He was going to escort us to the call, which was way out at near 10 on High Point Road at that time, and I was about as nervous as I could be. As we were going around, we left Station 5 going out Radius. Once I got on ACOT, my right leg got to jumping and I couldn't stop it. And Steve Fowler reached over there and slapped me on my leg and said, just hold it down, it's gonna be all right. And I told him I got it from here. But we got all the way to, almost to the scene when they turned us around, because 10 went on the call too. And when we got back to the station, my leg was still shaking. And when I got out of the truck, stepped out of the truck, I couldn't hold my weight up. I kind of dropped a little bit because I think the adrenaline was pumping too hard, and that's what got it going. Well, you know, in that panel truck, when you're turning corners, your equipment sometimes just start falling around on it because it wasn't really tacked down, you know, but it was a great experience for me since I was just a rookie at that time. One of my first big fires was when I got transferred from 5 and went to Station 12. The Palms apartment caught on fire, and I had never pumped a fire call at that time, but Jim Walling was there with me, and he let me drive to the call and pump it. And when we got to the scene, we hadn't caught a hydrant yet because we didn't really know what was going on. There was smoke coming from it. So we pulled off an 1.5 inch hose, which now they carry 1 3/4 or something now. And as we were dragging hose across there, somehow it turned into a second alarm. And when it became a second alarm, I was getting a little bit nervous because when he went in, he came back out, I kept telling him, I think we need to catch that hydrant over there. And just so happened, we had one of the firemen that was off duty, can't remember his first name, but I believe it was Welch, Wayne Welch. He helped me drag hose to the hydrant, which we had split loads, 2.5 and 3 inch. So he helped me get that over there. I got it hooked up, and I got the truck ready to refill in case we ran out of water, so we make sure we have plenty of water. And on that second alarm, next thing I knew, hose was going everywhere. People were coming to the truck, snatching off hose, bringing hose, hooking up to the ports. And when I looked out down the hill, I couldn't even understand how I could figure out what I needed to do, because I'd been told before, sometimes you'll see hose stretched out across one another and look like spaghetti. And that's exactly what it looked like. And I was just as nervous because then Chief Powell comes showing up, Chief Kent showed up, and when they came by, they looking at the pump panel and trying to see what I was pumping, and they just looked at it and said, good job. And I just stood there. The next thing I know, my training officers showed up on the scene because the fire had spread even more, you know. So trying to figure out where your line was going that you was pumping on, you had to trace all that through all that 2.5, 3 inch hose or some more 1.5 inch hose. But I think I did pretty good. At least they told me I did. Because of 9/11, and they had already tried to blow that building up before, approximately 2 years earlier. And when that failed, somehow or another, however they thought of flying planes into it, came later. And when that happened, it got me to thinking about what kind of rescue were we planning on doing or firefighting that those guys were going to do. And we realized, thinking about it more and more, it was going to be a hard job to do. You're talking about climbing 79 floors or something with air packs and all that. And it just worked on me a little bit. I kept thinking, is this going to lead to something more? Maybe some other type of war that we might have to get engaged in. And as far as the 343 firemen that passed, one, I think at that time I read, he was the oldest firefighter, and he was like 70 years old. And I was wondering, why would you have a 70-year-old man still fighting fire? And I think he liked it, or he would have left, retired, because they have a 20-year plan. But it was something to think about and try to prepare ourselves for it if we had to do something like that. I don't really think it challenged me more. It made me study territory a lot more, so I know exactly where I was going, you know, and to keep up my fire stream, learning how to do those figures, that was one of the main things I wanted to make sure I was good at, and I kept working myself to it. So other than that, that was it. Taking tests, especially after, just before you have to start taking captain's exams and stuff like that. Yeah, it kind of was a challenge on that.
Okay.
I would love to do it all over again if I was probably 18 years old instead of being 25 when I started. But I have no regrets about doing what I do. I would say my most heartbreaking moment, or at least one of them, was we were on duty when we heard the call come in at Fire Station 6, and Raymond Cochran passed. He had a heart attack there, and everybody was just nervous about it. And it was just hard to accept his death because, I mean, he was a real trooper, in my opinion. I liked him. I think everybody liked him because he just had that way with the firemen or anybody he met. I don't think he met a bad person in his life. But that really hit home, you know, because everybody on duty was just waiting, hoping that he would pull through. And he was playing basketball at that time. So that was one of them. And when we lost Nyland, he was off duty, but he had died in a car wreck. And that kind of bothered some of us, you know, because he was a young guy, yeah, Nyland Andrews. And his whole life was like over before it could even really get started good. Because if you ever was around him at any time, he made you feel good. He made you feel secure. And he knew his job and what to do, what to expect of the individuals. And he was always, at times when I'd see him out and about on days off, he always had that smile on his face and would always say something corny, but he was a good captain, I think. Probably one of the proudest moments I had, one was when I graduated from the Fire Academy at that time, and the other one was when I received my first, my name went in to be picked as as the best firefighter for that year, and when my name came up against a couple of other people, and I received it. It really made me proud. It made me feel good about what I had accomplished so far.
That's good.
I found working with female firefighters really wasn't a big problem because, for one, I had to do the physical agility test for the females that got hired the year before, and the city council came out to the training center. I didn't know what Chief Hagler was calling me out there for, but he called me out there to go through this obstacle course that they had, and I went through it. He didn't give me a break at all. He made me run through every one of them and get down to the training center to the towers, climb outside and hang off, get back in. And this was to see if the females could do this. And one of the council members, I always remember his name, was Ravel. He tried to do it, and he didn't succeed. And but it was a good thing And I enjoyed the women I worked with. I think we had to change with stuff, but different roles as you gradually went up the chart as far as getting promoted, everybody's role had to change. And one of the big changes was that when you became the driver, at that time, we took a test, and those who had made drive, even though they had less time than some of the other guys, some didn't like it because we had already been promoted over them. When it comes to vacation time, stuff like that, you know, we always expect people that's been on longer to take vacation above you, but if you made driver, you got that step in there. So that was a promotional step, but it worked good. I was in the Marine Corps before I came to the fire department. I spent 2 years in the Marine Corps, and I served in Vietnam for 13 months. I was at several places. I was at LZ called Baldy and a LZ called Ross. And at Ross was one of the most scariest times of my life because we had got overrun that night. And it was, if we didn't hold that LZ, then we had the companies in the back at LZ Baldy, they were supposed to drop heavy artillery on us. But we fought from about 10 o'clock that night until about 8 or 9 that morning. So it was a kind of strenuous thing. And then I had to go on a sweep afterwards. So it made a big difference in my life. I think I'd describe a successful firefighter as someone who has accomplished each one of the steps of promotion. And once you've gotten to where you feel you're comfortable, I think that would be your best moment. And I think that would work. It worked for me. Family and faith played a role because you're always looking for some kind of guidance. And sometimes you had to pray for things. And I did that when I had to. My mom's and was always there. So my family was glad when I graduated and I became a fireman. And it worked out fine. My mom has always been a big influence on me. In fact, my father too, but my mom has always been right there and cheering on me all the time. It's been pretty good. Since I retired, I'm doing a lot more things, taking my time about it anyway, but right now I think my health is pretty good. Yes. I have been exposed to it. And I don't know any military person that didn't serve there that wasn't exposed to it. If I had to speak to any other firefighters, especially the new ones, I would always try to tell them to keep their heads up, stay in your books, study. If times you could get together as a group, get together and work with each other to try to make sure everyone was on the same page, everybody would know how to take that test and pass it. The FEO, as far as the driver, I would tell him to basically know your street, know your territory, where you're going. You don't want to end up going on a call, not knowing where you're going, and you end up having your captain hollering at you, because most of the time the captains didn't know, but we had some captains that really did know. And I'm sure you know Captain Farmer, he would always give you a test. He'd draw maps on the board, put 1 or 2 street names, and you had to fill in the rest of them. So I would say study your maps. We used to ride territory. I don't know if they still doing it now or they just still reading maps. But for me, I used to ride territory, so I know exactly where I was going. I knew block numbers, and that kept me abreast of a lot of stuff. If new streets came in, I always try to pass it on. I think a good battalion chief, my definition for a good battalion chief is a man who makes that rank, who looks out for his men and his women in his battalion to make sure that everyone stays abreast of whatever goes on in the fire department. Well, probably the best thing I want them to remember about FO is that he was a good firefighter, I think. He was a good driver, and he got along with everybody. I see no reason why anybody could think any less of me than that. Oh, I think my family already knows about FO as far as being here in the fire department, that I appreciate it and I enjoyed it. If I had my chance to do it again, I would come back to it. That the personal part would be that I succeeded in what I went after. As far as being mindful of what was always around me, the guys and girls that I worked with, and on up the line as far as from a rookie all the way up to the chief of the department. I think my granddaughters know quite a bit because they came around the fire station and they got to know what my job was about. Personally, they just look at me as a grandfather. You know, I see them when I see them. I try to make sure that they are comfortable and well cared for. And I had them, they could never, one of my granddaughters could never call me grandfather. So she always called me Greepaw. So I made sure they just kept calling me Greepaw, and I enjoy it. No, I think about the best thing I could say is I could tell them or anybody else, I feel like I was a great firefighter. One of the best out there, maybe not the best, but I know I was good at what I did. I enjoyed it all. I have nothing to look back on and regret it. So FO is FO. And that's it. And
we hope you enjoyed watching these documentaries. It was our goal to share and preserve the memories of our retired Greensboro firefighters. It is our desire that these documentaries will inspire future generations to continue the brotherhood, sisterhood, and camaraderie while always striving for excellence in their careers. While fire apparatus, equipment, and technology have improved, several things will always remain the same. The courage and bravery it takes to mitigate natural and man-made disasters will always be a part of the job. Although our retirees are no longer a physical part of the GFD world, a giant piece of each retiree's memories have been shared with you today. These memories will be in their hearts and minds forever. A special thank you goes out to Captain Harold Haney for his many long hours of recording and editing. Thank you, Harold. A job well done.